Hi, I am Luna. Welcome to the Mystery of the Gnosis. Today we have part 3 of At-Hertons.
Your stories.
Okay, so assuming for a moment that Sitchin's right, what kind of impact did these
At-Hertons
alleged
Part 3.
manipulations have?
Well, if you follow his line of thinking, their influence was incredibly far-reaching. He suggests their meddling didn't stop at rewriting texts or shaping religious doctrines. He even links them to the establishment of powerful institutions like the Vatican and Mecca.
Wow, so we're talking about a level of influence that spans centuries and shapes entire civilizations.
Exactly. Sitchin argues that the At-Hertons were playing the long game, setting in motion events that would have repercussions for generations to come.
So instead of those wise men bearing gifts of hope and enlightenment, we have these figures allegedly manipulating religion and consolidating power for their own ends. It's a pretty dark and disturbing interpretation.
It is. But it also raises some fascinating questions. How much of what we accept as history or religious truth has been shaped by forces we don't fully understand? Are there hidden agendas and power struggles at play that have influenced the course of human events?
I mean, even if you take Sitchin's theory with a grain of salt, it definitely makes you think about the power of narratives and how they can be used to control and manipulate people.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that history is often written by the victors, and those in power have a vested interest in shaping the story to their advantage.
All right, so we've been talking a lot about the At-Hertons' alleged motives and methods, but let's get back to the specifics of their mining operations. Each brother had his own domain, his own way of running things, right?
Yes. They each seem to have had their own unique approach to cruelty and exploitation.
Let's start with Sofar, the oldest brother in charge of those Indian mines. What made his operation particularly brutal?
Well, aside from the sheer scale of forced labor he employed, Sitchin describes Sofar as having a penchant for a particularly gruesome form of torture known as scaphism.
Okay, I think we can spare our listeners the gory details of that one, but the fact that it's even mentioned paints a pretty vivid picture of Sofar's ruthlessness.
It does. And it highlights the dehumanizing nature of these operations. These weren't just workers, they were seen as disposable resources to be exploited and discarded.
And Bildad, the middle brother overseeing the Anatolian mines, what was his style?
Sitchin depicts Bildad as more of an industrialist, obsessed with efficiency and output. He's described as forcing slaves to work around the clock in dangerous conditions, operating heavy machinery with little regard for their safety or well-being. There are even accounts of him pouring molten metal on those who dared to slack off or fall asleep from exhaustion.
It's like a horrific pre-industrial revolution, with all the exploitation, but none of the worker protections that came later, at least in some parts of the world.
Exactly, and it raises uncomfortable questions about how much has really changed. Are we still benefiting from systems that exploit and dehumanize workers, even if the methods have become more sophisticated?
And lastly, we have Eliphaz, the youngest brother, ruling over the Arabian mines.